Welcome to The Clever Angle, the podcast where you get job shadowing experience without the job shadowing. I'm your host, Tevin McGee, and each week I'll bring you a different career field and give you a roadmap of how to get there. So without further ado, let's jump into the show. Today, we are interviewing an attorney, Megan Tweedy. She's from the Northwest Arkansas area, and she's going to be breaking down what it's like practicing law, how to get there, and some tips. So, without further ado, let's get into it.
Hello, this is Megan.
Hey, this is Tevin. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Tevin. How in the world are you?
I'm great. First of all, I just want to thank you for doing the interview.
I'm really excited. So what are you up to these days besides running a podcast, which is super cool?
During the quarantine, we've been working a lot. So my day job is I work for Coca-Cola, and we're working about 50 hours a week over there. Me and my wife have 2 kids, and
Yeah, because you're dad.
exactly. So they've been keeping us pretty busy and pretty entertained. But what about you? What have you been up to? Oh, and also I've been playing a lot of Pokemon Go too. So
Yeah, me too. I've been playing a ton of Pokemon Go during quarantine. Well, during quarantine, we have been working from home, which is really strange because the law office is the hub. It's where everything happens. It's where all the information is. It's where all the connections are. So it's been something to adjust to working at my kitchen table instead of being in my office. But other than that, I've been running. I got back into running, which was nice. I mean, what else am I going to do? I don't have to commute anymore, so that opens up time in my schedule. And plus, too, it's good to get back into good shape when you have a desk job.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So, you're an attorney.
I am.
What is it? What was it like getting the law degree?
Well, it was a process. It was a journey, but honestly, it flew by because, well, you think, okay, I graduated from undergrad and now I'm going to go to law school and it's going to take me 3 years to get licensed or to graduate to where I even can get licensed. That seems like a long time, but once I actually got to law school, I looked up and it was my 3L year and I was staring down the barrel of graduation and the bar exam. So it was a whirlwind too.
Yeah, so you talked a little bit about undergrad. So you went to undergrad at ASU, right?
Yes, I did. That is where we first met, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is. I was thinking about that. I was like, yeah, because you had a broadcast journalism job or degree, didn't you?
I did. Whenever I got to Arkansas State in 2012, it was in 2012. Fall of 2012 was my freshman year. I started out as a print journalism major, and then I ultimately wound up deciding to switch over to broadcasting.
Yeah. So how did you go from that sort of undergrad degree to I want to practice law?
It was almost time for me to graduate, and I graduated a semester early, so I graduated in December of 2015. And leading up to graduation, I was trying to make some serious decisions about what kind of career I wanted to pursue, and law school was not on the table throughout my entire undergraduate time. It didn't come into play until probably my last year of undergrad, and I just didn't think that I would be fulfilled if I graduated and just went into a degree or a career in broadcasting. I knew I didn't want to be a news anchor. I didn't want to be on TV, and radio was what I was doing at the time. I was an on-air personality at a local radio station, but there's not much room for advancement unless you move to a very large market, and even then it doesn't always happen. So I knew I didn't want to go forward with radio either. I wanted something a little bit more than that, and so that's when I made the choice to go to law school.
So can you tell me just a little bit of what it was like being on the radio?
It was a lot of fun, but it's also kind of strange too because you sit in a sound booth and you talk to yourself for like 3 or 4 hours on a shift. So you feel kind of crazy too. But you have to do a lot of research, find content that you're going to talk about. You have to keep up with popular culture, what's going on in the music scene. And it was fun. I mean, I met a lot of people. I got to do a lot of community events, and it is a creative outlet too. So I enjoyed it.
So, okay, pivoting back to the law degree. So, can you just tell us a little bit of what it was like as far as the things that you learned during law school? I think I talked to you a little bit about this off air. I'm a fan of Suits. I think I put that in the question. Are you familiar with the show?
So I am so disappointed to tell you I have never watched Suits before, but I do have some other TV shows that are about lawyers that I really enjoy.
Okay,
I like
what you got?
Boston Legal.
Yeah,
Have you ever watched Boston Legal?
I have not.
Yeah, it's older and it's really campy, but there's like just enough truth to it to make it pretty entertaining to an attorney. Some of the stuff they do, you're like, that's actually pretty accurate. I mean, they get a whole lot of not guilty verdicts when they probably not win that many cases realistically, but it's a lot of fun to watch. I also really like Goliath too. That's a good one.
Yeah, and the strange thing is I've never really been into like law type shows, but there was just something about the premise of that show that really kind of sucked me in. And
What do you like about Suits? What is it that drew you in?
okay, so it starts off the main character in season one. His name is Mike Ross, and he isn't a lawyer, but he has a photographic memory, and he takes the bar exam for people. He gets all these crazy scores on the bar exam for people, and he's on the verge of getting caught. The proctor in the exam room is like chasing after him, and he runs into an interview with Harvey Specter, who is actually waiting on someone to hire for his law firm. So he goes in there and he hires Mike. He hires Mike just because of his knowledge of law, and he starts like working as a lawyer. So the whole show is basically he's a fraud, but he's practicing law because of all of the things that he's learned along the way, and he eventually becomes a lawyer throughout the show. But it's just like a that type of that type of show. So just that storyline kind of drew me in, and then the law stuff was interesting once I started watching it.
That makes sense.
I
That's cool. I'm gonna have to check it out. I'm gonna add it to my must watch later list for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, I would definitely recommend it for sure. Speaking of that, are you watching anything currently? I'm always looking for recommendations.
Well, we're watching Community right now, which actually is kind of the same premise as Suits in the sense that the whole reason why the main character has to go back to this community college is because he faked all of his qualifications to be an attorney. I don't even think he got his undergraduate degree. So he gets found out and he has to go back to community college and he's like, ugh, I'm this hotshot. I shouldn't be here. I was an attorney, even though he wasn't really. And over the course of the show, he makes some friends and kind of has a good character arc to where he becomes a little bit of a better person. And it's also just really funny too. It's lighthearted.
Oh, that's awesome! I've never actually heard of that show. Okay, so did you guys get to do like mock trials and different things while you're in school?
We did, yeah. So our school hosts a couple of mock trial competitions about twice a year, and anybody can choose to sign up. It's not mandatory. It's something that if you want to do that competitively and hone your practical skills in the courtroom, then sign up for it and see how well you do and see how far you advance. And also, too, we offer what's called a trial advocacy course, and it's actually currently taught by a sitting federal judge. So he gives us, several seminars on the basic elements of trial and litigation and litigating in our adversarial court system that we have in the United States. So that was an amazing opportunity to learn from somebody who was a practicing attorney for many years and now sits as a judge. I took that class, and our actual final exam was to have a mock trial. So that I got a lot of really, really good experience from that. Do you have any other questions about how mock trial works?
Do you have to be on both sides of the mock trial, or how does the process work, and how do you prepare for it?
So at the beginning, they'll give you a packet of a bunch of different documents that have a fictional set of facts essentially, and something's happened, whether it's criminal or civil, and then you're assigned to one side or the other. So you'll either be the plaintiff or the defendant's attorney, and then you take what you have and go from there as far as getting your trial prep together. I will say that anybody who is thinking about going to law school and wants to do mock trial, you should definitely wait until you've taken your evidence class first, because the first mock trial I ever did, I had not had any evidence yet. It was the end of my first year of law school, and my partner and I just got obliterated. We had no idea how the rules of evidence worked. Hearsay, introducing exhibits, what you can and can't ask the witness, and we got absolutely destroyed.
So what was that case on?
I mean, it was a fake case. All mock trial cases, just a fictional set of facts. And that one in particular, there was, gosh, it's been a while now, but it was an employment case. Someone had been injured on the job. And so we represented the person who had been injured. He was making a claim against the company that had employed him for damages due to the injury that he sustained.
Oh, okay. And you guys got obliterated because you didn't
We
have
we got smoked. I mean, we just got. They mopped the floor with us, and actually, too, my partner was my now fiance, and we weren't dating at the time, but we were friends, and so I always look back fondly on how embarrassing that was.
Yeah. So what law school did you attend? And
Yes, I went to the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, their School of Law here, and the program's 3 years. Most traditional law programs are 3 years. A lot of schools also offer part-time programs, and that extends it for an additional year.
oh, that's okay. That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. So how important would you say like a good GPA in your undergrad is to getting into a law school?
It's very important. Your grades matter, and while you should always strive, obviously, to get good grades and take school seriously, you should definitely keep it on the front burner if you plan on going to law school. But it's not the be all and end all. There's also a little thing called the LSATs, and you've got to take that exam too.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about the LSATs? Like how much does a good LSAT score weigh in the between the two?
Well, the LSAT is absolutely nuts, and there's been a lot of talk over recent years about coming up with some other entrance exam for law school, because it's just not a valid metric for how good of a law student you're going to be, even though people say it is, or they have said it is over the years. And it's certainly not a measure of whether or not you're going to be a good attorney whenever you get out of law school. So maybe someday they'll come up with a different exam or a different process, but for now we're stuck with the LSAT. And it does. The score matters. But really, what you have to look at is the schools that you're interested in going to. Look at their admission requirements. And then that will give you an idea of exactly what you need to be shooting for in terms of your GPA and your LSAT score. So just do your homework.
Other than the LSAT's a good GPA, what are some other prereqs before you could apply to the school that you applied to?
Not much, actually. A bachelor's degree, and it can be in pretty much anything. Some schools do require you to do personal statements. They want you to write a personal statement and explain why you want to become an attorney and why you think that you're a good fit for that school, but some don't have that requirement. So again, it's really important to do your research.
Yeah, so are there scholarships that you can get for law school, or is it just something you're going to have to either pay for out of pocket or get loans for?
There are scholarships, with the caveat that they're incredibly difficult to keep past your first year. I'll just use my experience as an example. Whenever I came in my first year of law school, I had been awarded a scholarship by the school, and I was ecstatic because it did cut down the expense of tuition by a lot. It didn't pay at all, but it definitely helped. But the problem was, I knew, because it was part of the terms and conditions of the scholarship, if I didn't stay within, I think it was the top 20% of my class after my first year, then I would automatically lose it. And that's a big ask, because 1L is really hard.
Did you work during law school, or was this your only focus during the time?
I did not work my first year of law school, and the vast majority of 1L students don't work. In fact, whenever we got to our first day of law school, they had us sign a sheet of paper saying that we wouldn't work during our first year. And the reason why they do that is because it's almost impossible to succeed your first year because you don't know what you're doing. You're figuring it all out, and then also balance a job on top of that.
Yeah. So can you just take me through like what it was like during like your first day of law school?
You just don't know what to expect. It's so difficult to even describe what 1L year is like if you haven't experienced it. So everybody was nervous, butterflies in their stomach, all these new people, and you know they're going to be your classmates for the next 3 years. And you also know too that by the very nature of the fact that they wanted to come here and do this, they're all going to be very competitive, and you're all going to be graded on a curve and ranked against one another. So there's that element of it too.
Yeah. So how many hours would you say per week that was dedicated to studying during law school?
Honestly, that's a good question, and I did not track it while I was in law school my first year. And I think, honestly, it probably would have been a little bit toxic if I had, because it's hard enough to figure everything out and keep your head above water without focusing on exactly how much time you're spending on studying versus how much time your friend over here is spending on studying.
Yeah.
So 15 hours was the course load. That was my course load both my first semester of 1L and also my second. Everybody had the same courses, the same course load. So 15 hours in class, and then you add on some additional hours throughout the week that you spend preparing to go to class. You have to do so much reading. And then also the time that you spend researching and writing for your legal writing course, too. So I hesitate to put an exact number on it, but it does take a lot of time.
Yeah. So we talked about your undergrad degree and we talked about you eventually going into law. Did you ever, like growing up, ever want to be a lawyer? Was that like one of the degrees that you said you wanted to be when you grew up?
It really, really wasn't. And I wish I was one of those people who came out of the womb saying, I'm going to go be a barrister whenever I grow up. But no, it really didn't cross my mind. I mean, I told my parents whenever I was a little kid, and they love to tell the story, that I said that I either wanted to be a singer or a basketball player. Neither one of those things happened. But I really enjoyed writing. I always loved to write. So that's what ultimately drew me into journalism, and writing well is a really important part of being an attorney too. So I knew at least I had that in my wheelhouse coming in.
Yeah, that's awesome. I definitely enjoy writing as well. So 3 years go by. What was it like when you were getting ready to graduate? Like, did you already have like a job lined up, or um, did you or were you just going out into this in the world as being an attorney blind?
I was very fortunate because by the time I graduated, I had already gotten a job offer. I'd gotten a job offer with the law firm that I had been clerking with and working at for the past couple years while I was in law school. I knew it was a good fit for me. I knew they wanted me. I knew I got along with everybody in that office, and I was extremely excited to not only be a part of that law firm, but to not have to worry about the job hunt on top of trying to pass the bar exam.
Yeah. So is there like a point during law school where you decide what kind of attorney you're going to be, or like when you get your law degree you can just do anything?
It's certainly, and if this is not what you're asking, let me know. It's certainly not a situation where you have to pick a certain kind of law to major in law
Yeah.
school. You take 6 core courses. They're called bar courses. You're 1L year, and everybody takes these courses. You take criminal law, you take torts, you take property, you take contract law, you take constitutional law, and you take civil procedure. So you take those, and then after those are out of the way, you get the freedom to pick which courses you are going to take, but you still need to focus on taking courses that are going to show up on the bar exam because you want to try to be prepared for that as much as possible. And then after you've taken those bar courses, you get more freedom to decide, oh, well, this sounds super interesting to me. I think I might want to go into some or be an attorney for a hospital. Well, I'll take health policy or something that's a little bit more niche.
Okay, so work are you doing at the current firm that you're at?
My law firm is a general practice law firm, which is a boring way to say that we do everything under the sun, essentially, except bankruptcy and employment law. Those are the only two areas that we don't do. And that keeps it exciting because you never know what kind of case is going to walk through your door on any given day.
So, do you remember your first case straight out of law school?
Well, I've only been licensed for 8 months, so it would be pretty bad if I forgot my first case right out of law school. But to that question, I think probably a better story would be the first case I ever got assigned to as a law clerk, because
Oh
that was my
yeah.
first chance to go from all these theories I've been learning in the classroom to actual practical application and figuring out what the practical side of being an attorney actually looks like.
Yeah. So can you tell a little bit about that experience?
I can think of one case off the top of my head, and I don't think it was the first one that I ever got assigned
Yeah.
to, but it was close to it. And it was a personal injury case, which actually is one of the areas that I focus on in my practice now. And it's one of my favorite areas overall. That's the kind of the direction I want to take my practice in. But at the time, I didn't even really know what a personal injury was. I had just finished my first year of law school. I'm like, what is this? What is this mess? And so it was a very big file. There was tons of medical treatment in it, and it hadn't been touched or gone through in a while. It had kind of just been sitting dormant. So it's this massive, massive amount of paper. And my boss drops it on my desk and says, I want you to fix this file and get this file ready for us to send a demand for settlement. And I had no idea what I was doing.
Other than being an attorney, what are some other legal jobs that you can get into?
There are lots of JD preferred jobs out there, but just to circle back really quick on the case I was telling you about as a
Yeah.
law clerk. So I take this big file home with me, and I'm like, I've got to do this. I've got to do a good job. I've got to impress this attorney that I work for. And so it's just hours of me poring over medical records. And I've never even seen medical records before, and teaching myself how to read them and sorting out all the different charges and putting together the actual statement of what happened in the case and with his injury. But by the time I got done, I realized I actually really like this. And then a few months down the road, whenever the case settled and I knew that that's something that I had helped accomplish, and this person who had been injured actually got a really good settlement for their injuries, it was the best feeling ever.
So how long did it take you to go through the papers?
A lot longer than it would today. Let me put it that way. I spent hours on that over the course of probably about a week and a half, and then finally got it all sorted out to where I was able to take it back to my boss and say, I think I actually know what's going on in this case now.
Yeah. So back to the other jobs other than an attorney.
Jobs that do require a law degree or jobs that don't require one at all.
Let's do jobs that do require first.
Well, if you're going to go get licensed to practice law, then you have to have it's called a Juris Doctor. That's your law degree. But if you decide that you don't actually want to be a practicing attorney, there are lots of different jobs that you can look at if you take your law degree. They're called JD preferred positions. So, for example, Walmart, obviously, Fortune 1 company, located here in Northwest Arkansas, they actually have a lot of employment opportunities in their corporate department that are JD preferred. So that essentially is to say, if you have a law degree, then you're going to have an advantage over other candidates who don't. But it's not necessarily practicing law.
What about jobs that do not require a law degree?
Well, a paralegal comes to mind, and obviously that's a super important job. Without our legal assistants and our support staff in our law firm, we just would not be able to function the way that we do. They are amazing. They are the backbone of what we do. They make our job so much easier. And you don't have to have a law degree to be a paralegal. You do have to go and do training for it. You have to get some kind of certification. I'm not clear on exactly what it is, and I don't want to speak on it because I don't know. But you do have to get some kind of certificate to be a paralegal, and then you can come and work in a law office and do that.
So we talked a little bit about the bar exam. What are some tips for preparing for that?
Get a bar prep course, a good bar prep course, and then settle down and come to the realization that you are not going to be doing anything except studying all day, every day for 6 weeks.
How often do they give bar exams?
It happens twice a year. It happens in July and it happens in February. And if you don't pass it the first time, you take it again. And if you don't pass it that time, you take it again.
Is there like a number of times that you have to pass it?
Some states have restrictions on how many times you can take it. And if you don't pass, then you can't take it again. But Arkansas, unless they've changed it since last I looked, I don't think Arkansas has a limit on its attempts.
So I saw that you got licensed in Missouri as well, I believe. What was
I
the reason?
did.
What was the reasoning behind that, and what was that experience like?
Well, it was an amazing opportunity, and that's why I took it, even though the thought of taking another bar exam was the last thing I wanted to do. Essentially, my boss told me, hey, where we practice, where we're located, we're only about 20 minutes from the state line. I know you just took the exam and got licensed in Arkansas, but if you're going to take another bar exam and get licensed in another state, do it while it's still fresh. He said, if you wait and let some years go by and then decide you're going to do it, you will regret not doing it sooner. So I took his advice. He told me that he would support me through it and understood if I needed to take extra time to study as far as balancing the work study balance. And so I just decided that it was something that I needed to do to further my career.
That's awesome. Did you find it any easier taking the second one than taking the first one?
It took away the element of surprise, the unknown, the not knowing what to expect the second time around. I don't know that it made it any easier, though, because there's nothing about the bar exam that's easy.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I just saw that. I was like, man, that's really cool. I wrote down to remember to ask you about that.
It was a neat experience, and I'm so overjoyed to be licensed in Missouri. I can't wait to build my practice and be able to help clients in Missouri, too. It's going to be a really good thing, I think.
Yeah, so I always like to talk about the ladder in a career field. So, what does like a promotion in the law world look like?
It depends on your law firm and your job, whether you're in private practice or if you have a public sector job. It varies wildly. The traditional trajectory that people probably think of first, and that you do see a lot on legal dramas, starting out as an associate attorney, essentially one of the lower men on the totem pole, for lack of a better term. Start there. You're still an attorney, but you have to prove yourself. So you're working hard to show that you have the skills, that you can build your client base, and then eventually, hopefully, be promoted to partner.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's really interesting.
And I think that broadly, the goal period when it comes to working toward and eventually getting a promotion is just to show that each year that you practice and get another year of experience, you're growing your skills, and you are growing your client base, because that shows that you're moving forward and that you are somebody that should be promoted.
Yeah. So, if you could go back to your high school self and give yourself some advice, what would you tell yourself?
That's a really good question. I would tell myself that it's not all going to fall into place right away. You won't see the full picture. Well, there'll really be no point in time when you can see the full picture. And some things you just have to be patient and take the opportunities that are in front of you, and wait until you see exactly what your future is going to be shaped into.
Yeah, so this is a question that I asked on my last episode. I was interviewing a film director, and he actually got a degree in film, but he said if he could go back and get his undergrad degree in a different field, he would do business. Would you change getting your undergrad degree in journalism, broadcast journalism?
I ultimately probably wouldn't change it, because the communication skills I learned are vital to the practice of law. But I could definitely see a benefit to having a business degree, because if I ever wanted to open my own law practice, well, guess what? It's no longer just about whether or not you can be an attorney. It's about whether or not you can keep a business afloat. And that's something that I see too, working at my law firm. my boss, he's the managing partner. Not just running a bit, or he's not just practicing the law. He's also keeping a law firm afloat. So I could see a lot of value in a business degree. That would probably be something I would consider. But ultimately, I'm pretty happy with the choice that I made.
Yeah. I just want to give you a compliment. You were like the most well spoken person I think I've ever talked to.
Thank you. I was so concerned. I thought, my goodness, I'm going to do this interview on this podcast. I'm not going to make any sense. People are going to think, wow, she's probably the worst attorney ever. So thank you. That relieves some of those concerns. My friends call it my radio voice. They used to make fun of me because they would say, wow, you could really tell that you put your radio voice on just
Yeah, so would you say that you work like 40 hours a week, or would you work do you work more as an attorney?
it fluctuates wildly. I'll tell you that much. And one of the things that people should consider before they decide to go down this career path and become a licensed attorney and decide to practice is whether or not you have the stamina and endurance that to work some of the hours that attorneys have to work sometimes, especially if you want to be a trial attorney. There's nothing more time consuming than preparing for trial because you have to take the time to fully articulate and see the issues from all angles possible. And it takes a while, and you've got to have attention to detail. So basically, the willingness to do whatever the job requires of you. And some weeks it's not going to be that way. You'll have a lighter week. You won't be in court. Like for instance, during this pandemic, none of us have been in court because the courts have been closed until about a week ago. So obviously, during those times, it's a little bit of a lighter workload, and then sometimes it's over 40 hours a week.
Could you tell the listeners what has it been like in an average day working from home?
An average work day looks like a lot of constantly being prepared for a fire to break out, essentially, is how I'll put it. And then, two, whenever it's an average work day, you're taking appointments. So, on top of doing the work that you know you have to do for the clients that you already have for whatever court date or deposition, what have you, that's coming up, you're also meeting with new clients and you're taking the time to pay very close attention to what they're telling you, make sure that you're listening to them fully and that they feel like they're being heard, and then bounce right back to, oh, well, you have to take this phone call because this person called and there's a new issue on another case. So there's a lot of, I hesitate to call it multitasking because it's not really multitasking. It's just the ability to be able to transition from the different types of tasks and then also get your work done.
Okay.
But it's busy. It's exciting. I love it. I love our law firm. We all get along so well. Like we genuinely enjoy each other's company. So it's a lot of fun to be there in that environment where everybody's there, everybody's working, the phones are ringing, people are coming in, you're meeting new people. And I've missed that so much during the pandemic. So now instead during COVID-19 and we're still not back full time in our office yet. Soon we're watching things to see when it'll be safe and when we do go back, we wear masks when we take clients, and our clients wear masks as well. But instead, it's been wake up in the morning, make coffee, walk to the kitchen table, sit down. You've got your files beside you. You got the printer that you just bought for COVID-19 to get you through working from home and catch up on drafting. Suddenly, there's time to do this discovery that's been sitting here and you've been putting it off. Well, now you've got time and catching up on files and making phone calls, lots of phone calls for sure.
Yeah, so what time do you usually start your day and what time does it usually end?
During this time, typically I'll get started around 8, and I'm not a big lunch break person. I find myself working through lunch a lot when I'm actually in the office, and I've found the same to be true at home because once I hit my stride, I just kind of want to keep going until I'm done for the day. And so from there, it just depends on what has come up or what I've accomplished. If I had a productive morning, then I might be able to quit a little earlier in the evening. Or if the opposite's true and I don't hit my stride until more like 2 or 3 o'clock, then I'll be working until 6 or 7.
That's definitely insightful for sure because I had no idea. It's definitely interesting.
Yeah.
So if you had any advice that you would give to somebody that was thinking about getting into the law degree, let's say like a high school senior, what advice would you give to that person?
To think about why you want to do it and make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. And everybody's reasons are going to be different, but I can rule out money relatively quickly, because just because you're an attorney doesn't mean that you're making a lot of money unless you are working for a massive law firm in a big city. That's just the reality of it. And if you're getting into it just because you want a fat paycheck, you're going to burn out really quickly. Your endurance is not going to be as high as somebody who got into it because they really had a passion for the law and for helping people understand and access the law. This is a people business. We have the opportunity to step in and fix issues for people and advocate for people in cases where sometimes their attorney might be the only person that's on their side. So you have to have a lot of compassion and a lot of empathy for what you're doing. Otherwise, I think you're probably not going to be very satisfied with the practice. So I would advise them to think hard about it and reach out early to attorneys in their community. Anybody who'll talk to them, say, can I have lunch with you? I think I might want to be an attorney. Maybe they even have a spare job for you. You can come and help them with their filing over the summer if you want to work there. And then you can really see what a law office is like. So do your homework, reflect on things, and make sure you're going into it for the right reasons.
I know I've experienced this starting this podcast, imposter syndrome. Is that something that you've dealt with?
It's a real thing in my experience. And a lot of people experience imposter syndrome in law school too. I think I probably felt it a little bit my first year because I didn't know any attorneys. I had no attorneys in my family. I didn't have any family friends who were attorneys. And looking around, it seemed like all my colleagues, all my classmates, oh, well, my dad is an attorney, or I've got this connection over here. They're all attorneys. So there was an element of that for me until I was able to be there long enough to make my own connections. And it's like, well, I know all these other attorneys too. Turns out I just had to introduce myself. So that was part of it too. But imposter syndrome, definitely, after getting licensed and walking back into the law firm and thinking, oh, I better go ask the attorney this question. And then looking down and saying, wait, now that's me. I am the attorney.
Yeah. Oh man, I definitely wondered that. So is there like an internship or anything that you have to do while you're in law school?
No, but there are a lot of options. And I think the most important thing that you can do when you're in law school is get a law clerk job and actually work for an attorney in a law office. I didn't even think that I'd made the right choice in law school until I got the job at the firm I currently work for as a law clerk. And then I got to see what the actual practical helping people aspect of it looked like. So I would highly encourage anybody who is about to start law school, is going to go to law school in the future. Clerkships are super important.
Yeah, can you just explain what that is? You've mentioned it a few times, but I'm not really sure like what a law clerk is.
Absolutely. It's a law student who's not licensed to practice law yet, who is essentially apprenticing for a licensed attorney. And some are paid, and it's a paid position typically, especially if it's in private practice. Some are unpaid, and they're called externships, and you actually get school credit for taking them. So it's part of your tuition. You don't get paid, but you do get credit toward your overall hours to graduate.
So was yours paid or unpaid?
Mine was paid. It was for a private practice law firm with, at the time, had 4 attorneys. And then after I graduated, I became attorney number 5.
Okay. That's awesome. I mean, it's a really inspiring story for sure. I honestly had never sat down and talked to someone that was a practicing attorney. I was a bartender for many years at a restaurant, and some attorneys would come in there, and they would want to talk about anything but work. So it's really refreshing to actually get down and to see your experience through law school and what it's been like for you in this first year.
And I'm excited to be able to share it with you
Yeah.
too. Absolutely. And that's funny. We've got that in common. Before I went into radio, I waited tables at a Ruby Tuesday for like over a year.
Really?
So I've
Oh, that's
definitely,
awesome.
definitely been in that job as well.
Yeah, it's a different beast. I honestly think that everyone should have to work in a restaurant at some degree because it just makes you appreciate the people that are actually going and taking the time to serve you when you go out. I appreciate dining out.
Kevin, I could not agree
Yeah,
more.
I definitely appreciate eating out a lot more after I work that job.
It puts things into perspective, and people can be really mean, honestly, if they have never been in the service industry before.
Yeah. So how was it working at Ruby Tuesdays? That's just somewhere I just never go, but I have been a few times. The salad bar, they got good burgers. How was it like?
Famous for the salad bar, so famous. It was interesting. I had never eaten at a Ruby Tuesday either, but they were hiring and I was desperate to get a job. I was a freshman in college and I knew I needed money because I was on my own. I needed to support myself, obviously. So I was happy for whatever job I could get at the time. And I worked it for a while because it's the job I had and I was making tips. So I was happy that whenever I found a job that was more in line with the career that I was working on at the
Yeah,
time.
this is a random question, but what's the biggest tip you've ever received at Ruby Tuesdays?
I think somebody tipped me $100 once, and I think that was on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, I think mine was like $100 too.
Nothing crazy, but I sure was excited whenever I opened that bill and
Yeah,
saw $100.
no, to a college kid, $100 is a lot. I might have did a backflip when I got my $100 tip. So
Exactly. Yeah, it went a lot longer way
yeah,
back then.
yeah. It definitely doesn't go far these days, especially with kids. 2 boxes of diapers, and that's pretty much it. And
I can imagine, and I do plan on having kids someday, and I'm well aware that that's gonna have to strike a whole new balancing act between work and family. So we'll cross that bridge when we get
yeah,
to it. But I admire all the parents out
yeah,
there.
it's definitely a completely new world. And the crazy thing is going from like kid number one freaking out to kid number two, uh, nothing really freaks me out anymore.
So it's true what they say. By the time you get past the first one, you're like, it's
Oh
fine. I know that
yeah,
the kid's gonna
one
survive.
hundred
I know
percent,
I can take care of it.
100%. I could yeah. I've got two little girls, and Mara is definitely she's experienced a lot, and it's just because we learned a lot with Ellery. So yeah, it's definitely once you if you get past the first one, I promise you, it's gravy from there. So
Awesome. And you're a girl dad. That's so
yeah,
cool.
yeah, we're done. So there will be
Are
no
you?
more McGee kids, but yeah, being a girl dad's awesome. It makes me appreciate things. It makes me look at the world in a different way. Because I mean, honestly, before I had kids, I always wanted a son, and then I had a girl, and I'm like, man, this is awesome. I wouldn't have it any other way. But
That is that is not the first time I've heard that. For example, my boss, and I've been talking about him a lot, but that's because he's awesome. He's a girl dad too. He has three girls, and they're all getting into their teenage years. One's not quite there yet, but she's getting close. So he has had lots of experience being a girl dad, and he talks often about how much it changed his perspective on just about everything. And one of his pet peeves too is whenever sexism comes out in the practice of law. He always calls people out for it and always encourages me to put people in their place if they make a sexist comment about me just because I'm a woman
yeah,
attorney.
yeah, it'll change you for sure. It softened me up a lot, which I don't like to admit, but I'll do anything for those girls. So uh,
That's
yeah, so I
awesome.
just got a few more questions. I got some icebreaker questions, which just kind of ending questions. But I've got one more question about law, and it is if you had to sell me on the degree of law, just the practice of law, what would you say?
I would tell you that it's an opportunity to make a difference. Maybe not be famous or a attorney that's going to wind up on TV someday for some giant case that makes national news, but it's just as satisfying to be a person who makes a massive difference in somebody's life in just one case. Just one family or just one person who's a parent who needs help with child custody or a person who's been catastrophically injured and needs to make a recovery and you're the one who helps them get the settlement that's going to help them afford their care and treatment for the rest of their lives and help make them whole. you can do that, and you can do it really well if this is a road you decide that you want to go down. And it's fun too. I mean, you get to make creative arguments, you get to meet a ton of people. That's how I would try to sell you.
No, yeah, I mean, I that's a great pitch. That's a great pitch for sure. So I've got like some bonus questions. We talked a little bit about Pokemon Go. I'm a huge nerd of pretty much everything. Love superheroes, love Pokemon, love just everything nerd culture. So I got a few questions
I love it.
for you here. If you were a Pokemon trainer instead of an attorney, which starter Pokemon would you choose and why?
So it's a toss up for me between Charmander and Mudkip just because I think Charizard is super cool. But honestly, Mudkip wins the day because Swampert is a beast.
Swampert is a beast for sure. I'm definitely going Turwig for sure. Um, I don't know. I've always been drawn to like the grass types, and then the grass and ground type is just he's a beast. Well, I think I used him against you the last time we battled.
You did, and he absolutely annihilated me. I was going to bring that up. And I've got two of those myself, too, that are evolved all the way up. And I've actually got one shiny
Yeah,
one and then one regular one. And they're so good and rage,
yeah,
too.
yeah, for sure. So I was like, man, she used a Gyarados, and then she used, Rafiri. I was like, man, this is like the perfect Pokemon to use against her.
Was just serendipitous. You destroyed me. Good job. Good
Yeah,
game.
definitely. So okay, if they were going to make a movie based on your life, what would that movie be called, and what actress would play you in that movie?
What would it be called? That's a really good question. I think that I know for a fact who I would want to play me, and that would be
I
Reese
I
Witherspoon
knew you
because
were gonna
she's
say that.
absolutely
I knew you were
iconic.
gonna say that. When you said that, I was like, she's gonna say Reese Witherspoon. I can see it.
Yes, she's a powerhouse.
What would you?
She is
She
a
is definitely.
powerhouse.
Have you seen the show Little Fires Everywhere?
Yes, I just finished
What
it
is?
actually. That was something.
Yes, it was powerful. I loved it, but oh my gosh, it just I love Reese Witherspoon, but she did a good job in making me not like her as a mom in that show.
I know. I mean, she was so unlikable. It was an incredible
Yeah,
performance.
it was. It was.
And it was at times, it was literally emotionally painful for me to watch it just because it was that big of a
Yes,
cringe. And they did such a good job showing how ugly people can be with their nature.
they were like, Mom, Izzy's leaving. Go after her." And she just went into her room. I was like, "Oh gosh, I just couldn't imagine doing that to my kids." But yeah, me and my wife watched it, and it was definitely one of our favorites for sure. But yeah, anyway, what's your movie called?
Movie is going to be called something probably that harkens back to where I'm from, which I'm originally from Northeast Arkansas, Pocahontas. So if I could tie in like the 11 Point River, which is the river that I grew up swimming in and boating on with my dad all my life, then I definitely try to do that. So maybe the girl from 11 Point or something
Okay,
like that.
okay.
It would be super dramatic and like hipsterish, I'm sure, because that's just kind of how I am. But probably something along those lines.
Yeah. So, did you graduate from Pocahontas?
No, I did not. I graduated from Black Rock, which is a few miles down the road. I graduated with a whopping total of 26
Okay,
people.
okay. Because it was weird because I interviewed a guy a few episodes ago. He's a pilot, and he actually graduated from Pocahontas in 2012. So I was like, oh, maybe, yeah,
What? What's his
Alex
name?
Kiefer. Yeah,
Huh. Man, I bet my family, if I don't know him, I bet my family definitely knows of him or some of his family. That's super
yeah, yeah.
interesting.
Okay, so last question. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
It would be the ability to eat as many French fries as I wanted without gaining any weight.
Okay.
But seriously, well, that would be a pretty cool superpower. Probably teleportation because, well, I'd never have to worry about being late to court.
Yeah, you could go anywhere you wanted.
And I could, and I wouldn't have to worry about my commute. And I could also just like pop in on my family and friends randomly and scare the crap out of them. That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, that wraps up the rest of our questions. Megan, thank you again for sitting down with me and just talking about your career. It's going to help a lot of people. I am so glad that I got to learn all of that stuff. So it was been a great talking to you. And if I'm ever up in Northwest Arkansas, we'll all go out and play some Pokemon Go.
Please hit me up. I really enjoy talking with you about this stuff. I feel like there's still so much that could be said about it because, well, like anything involving the law, it's relatively complicated and there's a lot of layers to it. So I'm happy to be a resource to anybody who listens to the podcast and has any additional questions about either law school or being a practicing attorney or anything in between. So thanks for this opportunity, and I hope that we get to hang out sometime together.
Yeah, I'll definitely hit you up. But yeah, this has been another episode of the Clever Angle podcast. We're gonna have some of Megan's Instagram or Facebook, somewhere where you can reach her and ask her questions. And peace. I just want to take the time to thank everybody for still rocking with us. Follow us on social media at The Clever Angle on Instagram and at The Clever Angle on Facebook. Stay tuned for more content. We got some great careers coming down the pipeline for you guys. And like I said, connect with us. We want to know what you guys think about the episode. We hope you enjoyed this one. It was a lot of fun. And until next Thursday, everybody, peace.